So what the Venv does is it's a virtual environment for Python. It's like a little container, because we actually already have Python installed. So if I say like which Python 3, it'll say user bin Python. But the minute that I go into my app and activate my Venv, so then I say source Venv bin activate. Now if I type which Python 3, which just basically tells us which binary we're using. Now you'll notice that it's actually using var ww app venv bin python 3. So we're actually, essentially what we're doing is we're using a localized version of Python. And the reason we do that is because let's say we wanted to host, which in most servers, let's say we wanted to host 3 different web applications. But let's say one web application uses Python 3.4, and then this one uses 3. Whatever. I don't know what the versions are. Let's just check. So we're on Python 3.8. So let's say one uses an older version of Python. That way we don't have collisions, because as we're installing stuff, so anytime you run those pip commands, like if I say pip 3 install Flask, now it's installing it to our virtual environment Python, not our server Python. And that way, when we run different servers, it actually uses the specific version of Python that we set up for that web application.
Okay.
So,
and this may be a silly question as well. So when I finished up my project from last week, I got to the web page and it said, hello. Today it doesn't refresh, and I know that has something to do with this, but how do you get it to do what it did last week?
It should refresh, because once we're here, the minute you start it up now, it should start the web server. So what I would do is I would type ifconfig IP space address, I believe. Yep. IP space address, and verify what your IP address is, because maybe that's changed. And then you'll want to make sure when you go up there that you use that IP address, and you still should get that hello world up there.
I don't have any IP address now.
Interesting.
And this happened last week. So I ran that, and then I lost my IP address, and then I don't remember what I did to get it back, but it comes and goes. And I've checked my connection, and I have no connection issues with any of my other applications.
Are you running in VirtualBox?
I think so.
Okay. You can always come here, and you can change this to like NAT and then back to bridged adapter.
How did you get there? You went to settings.
Yep. So if you're in your VirtualBox, make sure you're clicked on your server, go to settings, and then go to the network tab.
Okay. Mine says bridge adapter.
Yep. So change it to NAT and then hit save.
NAT. Oh, NAT.
And then change it back to bridged adapter and hit save. And then, and maybe it's something to do with saving the state or something. So you can always try to restart the server. So just to show you, if I wanted to restart my server, I could just say sudo reboot.
Okay, so by doing that, now I should be able to refresh my web page. It's taken a long time.
And I guess the big thing is I would first make sure that you have an IP address. So type in IP space address in your terminal and make sure that you have an IP address there. Because if it doesn't
Nope, I don't.
Okay, so then I would restart your server. So sudo reboot will reboot it, and we'll see if it pulls a new one there.
Now, when I reboot it, it saves everything I did last week, right?
Yep. It's
Phew.
saved on file. So
I'm getting a start job is running for wait for network to be configured right now.
Okay, yep, and that's actually probably what was holding it up. So we will give it just a minute. I should eventually kill it. So, and we got through. I'm trying to remember. We got through setting up the database and everything, right?
We got through part 1.
You didn't do the last 2 steps in your thing last week.
Okay. Yep. Because I remember setting up the Postgres stuff. And I remember.
Step. Let's see, what's that? 4 and 5.
Yeah. Yep. I think we made it down to here. Yeah, because I added this, and then we created the database. So we are going to be here.
Hey, Brother Crook,
Yeah.
just as a side note, you said last week that Windows, the terminal wouldn't do the SSH, but I found out later that it actually does.
Yeah, the new one. If you have the newest, in fact, let's see. They did that really cool video on the new Windows terminal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this one. If you have this one, it will do SSH.
Yeah, mine does it. I just tried it and it worked. So
Oh, cool.
got it, so.
Yeah, and I loved this video. This was probably the coolest. I mean, you know, who cares about a term? Most people don't put that much love into a terminal, but man, that video was pretty great.
It. That's cool. Okay. Thank you. I just want to let you know.
Yeah, that's good to know. Because being able just to like SSH into your terminal straight into it makes it a big difference because it just works better. So I guess just to talk to it, because we should all have our database created, because I think we ended like right here at the end. Still no IP address, huh? That is so weird. I'll help you in a minute here, because we'll have to get that one figured out.
I can wait.
Thank you. Yeah, no problem. And I don't think it'll take as long to get through this, because the next part's actually pretty easy. So the last thing we need to do, because we have our database set up, and we even went over how to connect in an IDE. So like dbeaver, you should have been able to get that set up if you wanted to. And just to be sure, I'm gonna real quick just log in, and I guess we don't even need to log in. Let's make sure I can log in. pSQL course catalog app. My password, and I use School Rocks. And then we're gonna I'm just gonna select everything from course. Okay, yep. So we do have a course, we have data there, so we're all good. And then to quit /Q. So we should be good. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to get ready to add Python to all this. So you kind of already have Python set up, but what we haven't done is connect our database to Python, and then we're obviously going to add a little bit of user interface. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add our package that we need for Python to be able to work with our database. So we're going to install this little package, and all this does is it's kind of like the Python driver for Postgres. So we're going to just say sudo apt install Postgres SQL Server dev. Obviously, the development part of it all is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to let that install. And so if you're to this point, you actually already have step 4 done. So not too shabby. The next part, so on the last step is where we actually add we kind of put all the pieces together. And we're going to use this tool called SQL Alchemy, and SQL Alchemy is really cool. Now, one thing I want to disclaim up front, because what SQL Alchemy lets you do is it actually makes it so you don't actually have to write as much SQL when you're, or any SQL, depending on what you're doing, in your Python. It kind of generates it for you, but you have to understand how SQL works really to make it work, or to fully understand it. So it is good to know SQL, and oftentimes, I've actually used SQL Alchemy before, and it just, you can't pull the stuff you need to, and so you end up writing the query yourself occasionally, which is fine. But what is really cool about it is that it has all of our Python objects for us. So, and I think I mentioned this last time, so sorry if you have to hear it again, but one of the biggest pains of programming, for me anyways, when you're building an app or some sort of project, one of the biggest slow points, one of the most labor intensive parts is building your Python objects or your classes. For those of you who are familiar with programming languages, is building all that boilerplate between your database and your application. And in a lot of ways, you end up building things twice. So for example, we've already defined what a course is, right? Our course is, has a name, and it has this and it has that, and we already have that in our database. And so oftentimes, when you're building all that from scratch, you have to almost duplicate all of that work, and it really gets kind of a little bit tedious. So let's close this so we can look at our objects here, because we actually have our database in here. So if we wanted to look at course, we can actually view this table. So we already have all this data here. We've defined this object, and in this case, the object is the table, which is good design. And that's kind of the way I like to think about it. Whenever I build a table, I'm building an object, or I'm actually building a structure that's going to hold those objects. I'm defining an object. And so we're going to do, we're going to use SQL Alchemy, which kind of takes a little bit out of it. There's this little thing called SQL Codagen. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to generate all of our Python for us. It's going to be super cool. I think you guys will really like it. If you're ever interested in having Python and database connectivity, which is major. Okay, so the first thing that we got to do first, though, is we're going to take everything kind of that we did, and we're actually going to kind of save it. So that way, if you want to have a fresh Flask instance, because right now our Flask, we could take and do whatever we wanted with this. Because right now it just says hello world. We could take, and at this point, it's an empty slate and it's working. So if you ever wanted to start your own project, this would be a great point, because you could kind of just start. But what we're going to do is, because I didn't want, obviously, you guys doing a lot of programming, because it's outside the scope of this class, is I've written a lot of this code already for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to back up what we have, and then we're going to pull the stuff that I have. So it'll kind of just be there for us. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to back up our stuff. And we're going to do that. We're just going to move it, actually, or rename it, rather. So we're going to say var www app, and we're going to change that to var www app.back. Basically stands for backup. So let's actually just go to that directory. So now if I go in here, I don't have an app directory anymore. I just have app.back. And that's going to be our backup, our empty one. And now that we're in here, we're actually going to pull our actual code. And this code comes from GitHub. So if you want to see it, you can actually just take this URL, and we can actually go to GitHub and just take a look at this. Basically, what we have here is our project, basically, and it's just a little sample project, and we're going to use that to go. So we're going to use Git to pull it down. If you've never used Git before, it's pretty awesome. And so I kind of try to find little ways, because not only is it the easiest way to get the files, but it's it also introduces you to a little bit. So if you ever want to get code off Git, this is how you do it. So you just say git clone, and then you type in the name of the Git repository, their URL. So we're going to say git clone. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to pull it down. So now I have this directory called Flask Lamp. Well, all of our server config is set up to use Flask, or is set up to use a directory called app. So we just have to move that real quick. So we're just going to say move Flask Lamp to app, and now we should have our normal app directory. And then everything should be good. And in fact, we can even go sudo service Apache 2 restart, because if we restart this, we're going to get a different result this time, hopefully. What do you know, now I'm spinning. But this is most likely because something is broken, and we're gonna fix that. So, and the thing that's broken actually is our Python virtual environment. So now that we, because we actually did away with our Ven folder. So now what we need to do is we need to go into var www. Well, we just need to go into app. So we're going to cd into app, and we should be at var www app. And you'll notice that we don't have a Ven file here. So we're going to say Python 3-m venv to create that little container. And now we have our venv, and now we're going to say source venv bin activate to activate it. And then we can install all of our stuff. Now, before we kind of just installed them by hand, but this time we're going to install from a file, because I actually have all the requirements. In fact, let's go take a look. And there we get that internal server error. But if we look at this requirements.txt file, it actually has all of our dependencies that we're going to be using for this project. So we're going to do that. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say pip install wheel. It will produce an error if you don't have it, but one that you can ignore. So I'm going to do that. And then to install from that file, we're just going to say pip install -r to say recursive. And we're going to install from requirements.txt. And basically, it's just going to read this file and download all the dependencies that we need for the project. And there we go. So now what we need to do, in fact, because we have all of our packages now, we have our virtual environment, but now we actually need to connect to our database, because if you guys used all the same credentials I did, then it should be pretty close to being set up. And in fact, right now, because I have all mine set up, in fact, if you look at the instructions, it'll say, you know, catalog app, the password is School Rocks, and it's at localhost meaning it's running on the same computer, and our database is course catalog. So at this point, we could actually probably run it, but I just kind of want to show you how you're going to adjust this. So the first thing we need to do is change our models connection.py. And we can see here that this is the line where all of our stuff would be. So if you used a different password other than School Rocks, you can come over here and just edit this. And that's all you need to do. Then you would obviously save. Then the other thing we need to change is right here, in app.py, we just have to change the same thing, same line, just right here. I should have thought ahead and created a file that has these as parameters that you could just import. But it would, yeah, that's what I should have done. But anyways, just like that, it should be good. So I'm actually going to say sudo service Apache 2 restart. And we're going to see what we get here. Now, hopefully, and there we go. So now all of a sudden we're actually running, and we're actually going to kind of, I tried to get a little bit further this time where we had the videos from last term, because I kind of want to get more into the UI, because obviously that's like the fun part. So anyways, we have our course catalog here. So if I go to schools, we can see this is pulling directly from our database now. So we can actually go here and see the course catalog. So you'll see our course here. And I'm actually going to do an insert into here and then refresh the page just to see, so we can watch exactly what happens. So I'm going to say, let's say select everything from course. So I'm used to my other database where it's all capitalized. So I'm going to real quick just insert a new row in here. Course ID we're going to leave null. The catalog ID we're going to keep the same. And let's call this CIT225. Database design and development. All right, and then obviously we want to set to active so it shows. So let's go ahead and hit save. And then if we just refresh this page, now we have our new records. So you can see that as you would do this, it would go all through it. And so what the other thing we can do is, so we added that straight through the database, but let's add one using the form. So we have our number here. So let's say business 101. Introduction to business. It's how many credits? I left those ones null. So let's just leave it null for now. You know, and I have mine kind of set up more on like the same kind of credit types. But here's I wanted to show you this. So this is a good example. So we're always talking about the common lookup table, right? Well, basically what we would do, we have it in its own table. But our credit type is basically the equivalent of our common lookup table. It's just split out. So you can see here that the credit type table holds, you know, our stuff. And when we select this, this is actually pulling directly from our credit type table. So in fact, let's actually just real quick. And this is why we use a common lookup table, because a lot of people would, you know, I think people that aren't used to it are probably say, oh, we'll build the form. You know, when you build an HTML form, you build out your options and whoop-de-doo. But what happens if you need to add some? So for example, the credit card type or whatever. So if we wanted to add a credit type, let's see, math, science, social studies, English, elective. Let's say we're going to add a very specific computer science credit type. So we hit save. Now, obviously, it's not going to pull here, but if we refresh the page, now we have our computer science. Now, obviously, we're not computer science, but let's go vocational, description. I was going to write something funny. And then we hit save. And let's go back and see if it added it. I can't remember if it actually is connected. Okay, so it doesn't look like that's actually connected, which is good because we're actually going to connect it here for us. So once you get to this point, you're actually good. This is all you need to do. But we're actually going to see what we need to do to make this work. So I kind of want to show you some of how Flask works. Anyways, so inside of our directory, you'll see a couple of different directories here. So we have models, we have templates, we have our virtual environment, which we can kind of just ignore, and then we have views. So our models, this is what holds our database models. So for example, models.py, if I do cat models.py, this is actually our Python objects, and I'm going to show you how to generate those. because this is really kind of the coolest part. And it says this in the instructions right here. So we're going to use what's called SQL Codagen. And SQL Codagen is just, like I said, it's super awesome because you can generate all of your Python objects right from your database. So we created our database because there are lots of things, lots of people do this the other way. They create the database from Python, but there's lots of things that you just can't do. And so I'm always a big fan of, look, build in the database with the language that was supposed to do it, and then we can go the other way. So we're going to use SQL Codagen, and I have a nice little article here that's linked there, because what this is going to do is it's going to create our code for us. It's going to write our Python code for us. So I'm going to actually do this just on my host machine. Let's go into my downloads folder. Okay, we'll do it there. So basically all we have to do is use this. First we have to install it. So you'll do sudo apt install. In fact, let's just show you that. And this is why Linux is so awesome, because you can say sudo apt install SQL Codagen. And boom, like that, we have this nice little package. And apparently I didn't have it, so it's a good thing we did it. And so then we're ready, we can just say SQL Codagen, and we say, look, output this to a file, and we're going to call that file models.py, and then we give it the same connection string that we used actually in up here. So I'm actually going to just grab this, copy it, and put it right here. We give it the same connection string because basically what we're going to do is say, build all the Python for our database. And apparently I did something. Oh, because I did localhost. So almost the same. If you ran this on your server, it would work. But in this case, we just have to change it to our server, which is 10.0.0.62. And then we run it. And now we can say code models.py. And here is all of our code that was just generated for us automatically. So maybe you guys have done this before, maybe you haven't, but this is pretty awesome because before you have to write all this boilerplate code and you have to define all this stuff. And this actually takes it down even more. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because you'll notice that in all these objects, they're actually a subclass of what's called base. And this is where that SQL alchemy really comes in, because these subclasses of base means that they already have all that boilerplate kind of built into them. So for example, let's, because that's actually the same models that we have inside of our file here. So now that we're here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to make it so we can insert our course from the UI. So let's open up FileZilla because we want to be able to change this all from here. And because we added all those files from command line, we might have to change our permissions. So what I'm going to do real quick is say chmod -R 775 app. And that'll let us edit it. Okay, and we're going to go to, I can't remember now, local dev. Go into our var www app. Okay, so here's our directory. So like I said, there's a few different directories here. Models holds our database stuff, which we just showed you how to generate it if you ever want to do on your own. That holds all of our Python objects. Templates is where we actually put our HTML. So we're going to be dealing with that quite a bit. And then our views is where our backend is. So like a traditional web application, you have your UI and then you have your backend. So what I'm going to do right now actually is I'm going to open up our view. And inside of our catalog.py, I'm just going to open up that file because this is where our backend is for our, here's our add course. So this is our backend for our add course. And what's really cool about Flask is every one of these routes, anytime you see this catalog.route, that's a URL that we're basically creating. So whenever I go to, what is the URL? Catalog and then the catalog ID and then add course. So for example, catalog, and we're in catalog 1, add course, it's going to add a course to SHS 1920 because that's what our catalog. And it actually runs this. So then you can see that it has all of our backend built here. So like our course form. So for example, this initialize course form function is right here. And what do you know? It just sets the credit types, and you'll see that this is where SQL Alchemy is really cool. You know, because normally you'd have to write this whole query to get like the credit types and all that kind of stuff. But what we can do is we can just say dbsession.query and then kind of just say what we want, and we get all of them. So we're gonna do a little bit of that here in just a second because we're gonna make it so it actually works. Let's see, and it actually looks like it tried. So it actually looks like it's built for it. So form.validate on submit. Anyway, so there's our, we'll fix whatever's broken. So there's our backend. And then if we want to see the actual front end, we go into the templates directory and into catalog. And then we have this add course. And so that's our template that's being used. And we can actually see that right here because it'll say render template catalog /add course.html. So that's our template here. And let's open that up. And here's what's crazy, right? So this is all that this takes to generate this whole web page because we have all this stuff kind of built in. And in fact, we could actually take out a lot of this stuff if we wanted. But this is actually all it takes to build this because we have, you'll notice up here it says extends base.html. That's actually where all of our like stuff around, so like our header, our footer, our head stuff and all that. So let's actually take a look at that real quick. If we view edit this, so this is where most of the HTML stuff is. So here you'll see our bootstrap includes our navigation. And what's cool is you could kind of all chunk this out into these blocks is what they're called. So that way you can, if on one page you want a different navigation, you could actually override it if you wanted to. Because you'll notice here on the nav bar, I actually say super, which means just inherit from there. And in fact, just to kind of show you, because we're going to inherit it, let's just put a test here. Let's save this, make sure we can save. Okay, file transfer successful. And then we have to restart our server. Sudo service Apache 2 restart. So now on this page, we should actually, what page did I put that on? Our add course. Let's go back and try it again. Oh, there we go. And maybe I'm not doing something right here. I did save, right? Anyway, you can override this stuff pretty easy, which is really, really fun. And maybe I'm just doing it wrong. I don't know.
So what kind of view engine is that using? I'm not familiar with those tags, the curly brackets and then your parentheses.
So this is actually Jinja. It's called Jinja 2 is the stuff it's using. And it's a templating language. And actually what this is built on, because it's just normal HTML, but we're using Bootstrap. So if you've ever heard use a Bootstrap before, it's pretty nice. Um, but yeah, basically it's just HTML, but you can do really cool stuff. Like here's a really cool example. Because one thing that I really enjoyed about Flask is it really keeps the UI and the back end separate. So let's go here into catalog, and our view catalog is where we actually see our stuff right here. So this is the page that we're looking at here. And what's really cool is we can have loops in here. So I wrote the code to put one course in here. You know, I have a card, which this is a little card, and then I have a course number, the course name, and the course description. And then you know, all that kind of fun stuff. And so I only wrote that once, but what I did is you can put this for loop here. And so I say for course and courses, and that means it'll loop through that however many times it needs to get every course. And oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm used to doing all this with Node.js, JavaScript, React, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, so Jinja essentially allows you to do the same thing from what I can tell, but it's letting you write Python in the HTML page, right?
It's not quite, it's not necessarily Python. It kind of, actually, I don't know how it works on the back end. I don't know, because I know it's not straight Python. Like you can't just write Python in here. But it does have a lot of functionality. Like you can do if statements and all that kind of stuff. But I know it is limited. Like you can't just full on write Python. But what's really cool is, so like if our view catalog, basically we handle all the back end right here. So like here I get all the data I need, and then I just render the template, and here is where I actually pass that data off to the template. So basically I'm saying, look, here I want you to load this template, and here's the catalog data, the school data, and then I'm going to give you an array of courses. And so then once it hits the template, when I say, oh, you know, the catalog name, it has that. And then for course and courses, boom, you know, it just takes it all and can use it. Because that's one of the things that I think was always a barrier for me, was how do I get data how do I pass data around? And so that's what I really enjoyed about Flask, is just how easy it was to pass the data around. Because like in JavaScript, you know, and JavaScript is great, but for data-driven applications like this, what I really like is that Flask takes care of the URL side of it as well, so that you're not left with a million files, because, you know, catalog.py has 3 URLs, and it could have a ton more, but it takes care of all the routing, it takes care of all the back end, and so it's pretty easy. I guess it's just the model view controller really at its finest, and it forces you to hold true to that, because you're not going to do any front end in you're not going to do any back end really in your HTML. It's purely interface, which I thoroughly enjoy. And it's great for data-driven applications, because you can do the stuff where in the URL you have it handles your get parameters super easy. It can handle post pretty easy too, but the get parameters make it really nice, because you can put the parameters right in the URL. Yeah, there's just a lot of nice things about it. But and I mean, JavaScript's great, because the one thing about this is anytime you want to, unless you add some other technology, you know, you kind of have to click a button. So like, you know, those buttons don't work yet. Well, that's what we're going to work on. But like to add a course, I have to click that button. Like where JavaScript, you could click this and maybe have a window come up and add the course. And I mean, technically you could probably do that here too. But you know, it just gets, you know, they're just a little bit different. But you can actually use both. So, you know, one of my favorite things that I've done actually is And in fact, if you didn't know this, lots of people use Flask. In fact, I think Google uses Flask a lot. In fact, they might even use it for their maps. I can't remember if they use, lots of people use Flask, and I think Maps might use Flask as a back end. I know Pinterest does. So I imagine Pinterest is probably using a lot of both. But you could have, because what I really like about Flask is how it's so data driven. So you could get to this point, and then you could actually have interactive stuff here. You could have a little. I'm a huge Angular fan, so like in a lot of my applications, I will build Angular inside of a Flask page. But again, the challenge is once you do that, then. Because I'm so used to saying, oh, if I need courses on the page, I can pass it like this. And I found a little nifty way to get that data into Angular, but most of the time, once you do that, then you have to requery the database. I usually build just an API with Flask, but in the API, a good example of the API would be something like this, And this is running off Flask, so this is just a Flask application, but all it's doing is it's delivering data through an API. And so whenever I want to use like Angular on a web page, I'll just have it use the API to pull the data. So that way I can get in JSON and do whatever I need to it from there.
You got your API attached to your database.
Yep. And in fact, we could do that right here. So, let me show you just a real quick project so we don't get too crazy. But because I can actually show you that one API right there. So this is, you'll notice it looks the same. We have our templates, our views, and all that kind of stuff. The only difference is the templates is pretty much empty. I actually did build a little bit of a front end to it, but templates is almost empty. But if I go into views, I built its own folder called API because it's not really a view because it's just the API. So if I go into the API, I can actually show you. So basically all this does, it's almost the same thing, is it just uses the SQL Alchemy. It queries the data, puts it all into a JSON format, and then it returns the JSON. And then you can build in your parameters. So like in this one, I have like, oh, if it has a ID as the get parameter, use it to query the objects. If it has the add location name, do that. So like in this case, we have the add location name is equal to home page 1. And so it pulls just that information. Whatever you choose, it's RESTful. So whatever you choose, you can dump it in there and boom, there you go. It pulls all your data and dumps it into JSON for you. So if you're ever building like a mobile application, Flask is awesome. In fact, tons of people use Flask solely for the API. So like they might have their web application running on like React or Node, but then they have Flask that actually runs their API to connect to their database, because then you could just pull your JSON really easy. Because it, like I said, it just handles URL data so well. It just kills it. But anyways, we kind of went down a rabbit there, which is fine. It's really good stuff. But anyways, kind of what I want to show you, because you can poke around this, because obviously I don't want you to get too crazy. But what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to build a new route, and this isn't part of the instructions. Like I said, once you get to the point to where you can see all this stuff, you're good. You don't need to do any more. I kind of just wanted this to be a fun, like, oh wow, the database can actually do something that I'm used to seeing. Because I think that's like one of the biggest problems, is that a lot of people hear the word database and they're kind of just like, I don't know. It's not near as much fun as like, programming or whatever, like I want to build an application, but almost everything is data driven now. And where, if something's data driven, it has to have a database. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're actually going to build the page, because right now, if I click on this view on this, if I want to view a course, we can't see anything. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to build the page that's going to let us view this data. And it's going to be super easy. And that's what the best part about all this is. So we obviously want to build a new page. So the first thing we need to do is build a route. So we're going to say catalog.route. And then this is where we can give it the URL. And the URL is going to determine what we see. So in this case, we're going to say catalog / and we could actually pass the catalog ID, which I'm going, well, let's not. Let's just say course. We're just going to go straight into course. And in fact, for this, we should probably have its own file. I like to, you'll notice that this is catalog.route. Technically, I would add a course file normally. So it's its own thing. But for the sake of time, let's just build it in here. So at catalog.route, and we're going to say course. And we're going to say the course ID. And that's kind of what we need there. So basically, as long as you have the course and the course ID, it's going to work. And let's say methods equal get and post. So basically, this will work for a get request or a post request. And then we just give it a Python function to run. So we're just going to say view course. And then the parameter that it takes is the same that we put up here because that's where it gets it. So it takes the course ID from the URL. And now we have our little thing. And just to test it, I'm just going to say, actually, let's test it all the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to say course is equal to, and this is how easy it is to pull our data out of the database. We're going to say db session dot query, and we're going to say course. We're going to say dot filter, and you can kind of see how it's building this. So select everything from course, and then the dot filter is where, and then we're going to say course dot course ID is equal to the course ID that we passed in. So now we have our course, and just to test that it works, we're going to say return, and we're going to say h1 plus course dot number. Close our tag there. Oh no, there we go. Save it. We're going to go through the fun little steps to restart. When you're doing this locally on your computer, actually, because most people don't have Linux, but if you have Linux, you can actually run this on your computer, and you can run a development server where it's a lot easier because you don't actually have to go through as many steps. But anyways, so we're here. Let's go to course, and we need a course ID. So let's try course ID 1 and see what we get. Okay. One thing I forgot right here. We need to say 1. We're only returning one item. So let's try that again. We have to restart again. And there we go. We got our CS 101. So we know it's working, right? And right now it's not pretty or anything, but you can see how fast we were able to get our data. And so now, using our templating, it's going to be super easy to build our stuff. So instead of returning this string, we're going to render a template. And we are going to render catalog view course.html, and we are obviously going to pass it the course. Okay, so we're going to render the template, and we're passing it this data right here, which we just showed. We're going to pass it the whole object, though, so that way we have access to it all. So let's go ahead and save that. Get our little pop-up here. And right now it's going to throw an error, but we're going to add a file that'll make it so it doesn't. So now we're going to go into our templates, and we're going to create a new file. And what did we call that? View course. Apparently I'm not following my own naming convention, but we'll get there. All right, and so I'm actually going to take, and I always do this, so you'll notice this is in there, but under the base, there's this empty file. So I'm actually going to open that, because usually I keep this up, because what this does is it actually has all of our stuff in here for us to get started. So our view course file, this is everything we need. And then I just have to come in here and edit a few things. So for our title, I'm actually going to put our course name in here. So I'm going to say course dot our number. Let's do our course dot number. And then for our little tiny thing here, we're going to say course dot name. Or is it title? Now I can't remember. It's name. Okay. So let's go back to our file. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. So we're going to just leave it just like that. We're going to test this, because you'll see how easy that was to go from this plain old white page here to having our full UI. So we're going to restart and reload, and of course we get an error. So let's see what it is. So we're going to say tail var log Apache to error.log. Oh, and we get a permission denied because I created this file through here, which you can set a setting to change the stuff, but we're going to just make sure our file permissions are right. So you'll notice that this says read write only. We're going to right click here, say file permissions. We're going to go 775 just like we did before, hit OK. And now we don't even need to restart. We should just be able to refresh it. And there we go. Something is definitely weird here. Maybe I have the wrong empty file. So let's go take a look. Maybe I have the wrong empty file. So let's grab let's look at our add course here. So we're going to do the same thing, but we're actually going to just take this and, there we go. Okay. So let's try again. We're just going to not use that template because obviously something's wrong there. We're going to say course dot, not name, we're going to say course dot number. And then in small, we're going to say course dot name. All right, let's try that instead, because apparently that empty file's wrong, which we can get that fixed. Let's restart. Oh man, am I just not pulling data here somewhere? Oh, I guess that helps too. Now let's restart now that it actually uploaded. And there we go. So now we're pulling our data in here. And we have lots of data in here. In fact, we have all of our course. So we have the ID, we have the number, the name, the description. So for that. And because we're using Bootstrap, we actually have a lot of stuff at our disposal to make UI really easy. And so I'm actually really quick we're going to do that just a little bit. So instead of a Jumbotron, which is Bootstrap is basically these built-in classes, which is really awesome. And then let's go. Card header. And basically, we're just going to put our card header in there. And let's put the name in the card header too. And then in the card body, I believe it's card body. Let's take a look here. Yeah, card body. We're going to put our course description. So in P, we're going to, well, let's make this one a little nice too. We're going to say class equal to a lead. And all these, I actually didn't, I don't think I wrote any, like hardly any CSS. This is all Bootstrap. So then we're just going to say course.description. Fix my little brokenness that I did here. There we go. Let's save. Make sure we get it transferred. Open up our terminal, restart, and let's reload and see what it looks like. And there we go. Now we have our card here. You know, and it kind of looks a little weird. So I'm gonna real quick. Let's just say like this. We're gonna in this container. We're gonna say that the margins on the top is 4 and the margins on the bottom is 4.
If you type MY instead of MT and MB, it'll do both for your top
Right. Right. Yep. You were right. And I think I typoed somewhere in there. But let's do that. Let's just say MY4. And that's because it's on the Y-axis. If you wanted it on the other side, you could. If you want it on all sides, you just say M4. Bootstrap is really cool. If you haven't used Bootstrap, highly recommended it. It's it makes building stuff so much faster.
You must have something on that bottom side that's
Yeah, it must be something weird there. I really built this pretty quick because I just wanted it as an example, but yeah, there must be something. And if you don't use Firefox, the really cool part is you can actually, yeah, so we can actually see that there's the body. Looks like it might be the issue here. Because it does have the padding, but for some reason the footer's just ignoring it. So anyways, but you can build stuff really quickly. And now just to show you, because right now we don't have the credit type in there, which maybe we want to show the credit type. And so, you know, we did a real quick on how to pull the course. But if we wanted to pull the credit type, we would need to do a join, right? Just like we have in the past. And so to do a join, we just say join to credit type. And it should automatically know what it is as long as it's defined in the database, which is one reason why I like to build everything here. Because if we look in here, we should have our stuff. Anyways, let's see, catalog. Oh, we already have it here, course. Okay, so if we look at our DDL, we have our foreign key constraints all set up, and the Python knows that. It's all been set up. In fact, let's take a look. Do we still have our, let's open a file here in our downloads, models.py. If we take a look at this, you can actually see it. So if we look at our course, our credit type ID is a foreign key. So it automatically knows that it's a foreign key. And so when we do that join, it already knows how to join it essentially for us. We don't have to, we can explicitly declare how to join it. In fact, sometimes you have to, but we don't always have to. So we want, oh, go ahead.
Is that a Postgres thing?
Nope, that's actually the Python. The SQL Alchemy is what does that. In fact, that in here, the SQL Alchemy, when we define this object course, it's actually a data type called column, a class called column that they created, and it is a foreign key subclass of type column, so it automatically connects them, which is, I think, really cool. I have had a few little things, like I said, and that's kind of where it came down. Like I said, sometimes I just had to execute the SQL myself, which you can actually just hand type a query. But, you know, sometimes it doesn't quite work that great. So anyways, we pulled our course and we joined it here. But like I said, we actually want that credit type. And there's a couple different ways we could do this. We could actually, because the problem is we want the name of the credit. And we could pull our data individually. So we could say like, we want the course dot, let's see, we want course dot number, course dot name, course dot, you know, we could pull it all individually. But oftentimes what I like to do is just go like this, and we could say the credit type is equal to, and then we could say db session.query credit type, and we say dot filter, if I type right, and we want it where the credit type dot credit type ID is equal to course dot credit type ID. Because we've already pulled the course, and that's the other thing that I really like about Flask is all of this is you don't have to worry about like promises and futures and asynchronous calls. It won't execute this until it's done with this. So when we pull the course, you know, it'll pull the course, and then on the next line we can use that data to pull the credit type tied to that course. So now that I'm in the course, now I want the credit type. Credit type is equal to credit type. All right, let's save that, and we're in our view course here, and then we're going to say P. Yes. We're going to bold this part. We're going to say credit type. Then here we can say credit type dot name. Let's see how we did. Oh, what do you know? So let's take a look. You know what? I think I know exactly what we did already. We forgot to put 1. And we still get it. So let's take a look. All right, no row was found for 1. So basically what it's saying is that, hey, I can't find what you're looking for. So this is where we have to kind of get a little bit tricky and try to figure out what's going on. Let's see. So real quick, just because I'm not familiar off the top of my head, I want to make sure that I have the right credit type ID. Let's take a look at credit type. Credit type ID. Okay, yep, so that looks good. Course.credit type ID. So real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just, these are attached to credits, right?
Is it possible you have the wrong table name? Because in the
So,
query, it didn't look like you had the underscore between credit and type.
So on the, because it's Python for objects, it just does a camel case.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't know. I don't know Python, so sorry.
Oh, gotcha. And that's just the way SQL Codagen did it. The reason why it's not pulling any rows is because these actually don't have a credit type assigned to them. So what we're going to do real quick is we're going to say update, or let's see what our credit type is. These are going to be computer science, so it's going to be credit type 9. So we're going to say update course set credit type ID equal to 9. We're going to do that for everybody. All right, so now we should just be able to reload here, and boom, there we go. So yeah, there's our credit type for our course. So you can see how easy it is to just pull your data from your database and start building some fun stuff. We could also build this to a form, so you could edit all this data if you wanted to, but we're not going to do that right now. Oh, but we do need to fix this, why this wasn't working. So one thing that we're going to do is let's go here and in our, let's see, our view add course. So we have this form set up and we use this special little library called WT Forms that's in Flask. And that's one of the best parts about Flask. If there's something you want to do, usually they have something for it. So like, for example, Flask and let's say we wanted to do OAuth, you know, there's a package that you can just install, Pip Install Flask OAuth, and it takes care of a lot of stuff for you. So like here's one for Twitter, you know, that will get your Twitter token. So you could authenticate against Twitter, all that kind of stuff, fun stuff. But we have one that handles forums for us. You know, so for example, when we go to add our course, but as part of that, we need to be able to get if something's wrong, because if we look at catalog.py, I have these validators. So like the name's got to be a string, numbers got to be a string, the description, and those are data required. So that means you have to have them, and all that kind of fun stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so when we add a course, it actually shows us our errors, because, you know, it happens. And I'll just for the sake of time, I'm going to real quick grab that code from somewhere else that I already have it. So let's open a file. And we need to be in the templates. Here we go. I'm just going to grab that code because basically we're just going to use the template to actually pull our errors. So if there's any errors in our form, it's gonna find them for us. So let's try that. And okay, so let's make sure we refresh the page. And let's see, we're gonna add CIT220. We already did that one. Let's add business 101. Intro to business. Credit type, let's do collective. Okay, so here we get this error that says it's not a decimal value. And if we take a look at our code down here on our catalog.py, our credit type, I think it will really, or our credits wants it to be a decimal. So basically we can't leave that empty. So we're going to just say that that's one credit. And then once we hit save, now we have our business 101. And now that we added it, now we can even click, oh, we didn't fix that. Let's hurry and fix that. On our view catalog, because right now this is just set to be a hashtag. We want to change this so it actually goes to our page that shows the class. We're going to say URL for, and that's just a function because we don't want to have to worry about trying to remember paths and changing them. So we're going to say the URL for catalog.view course, and we are going to pass it make sure we're doing this right. View course, we're going to pass it course underscore ID. Course underscore ID is equal to course underscore ID. And because we already have the course up here, you know, because we're obviously pulling course.name, number, description. And what's really cool is it doesn't matter if it's in the quotes or not, it'll all be the same. In fact, I could just take those out if I wanted to, like that. Let's save. Yes. Restart. Refresh. Okay, so now we should be able to click on Business 101 and it'll take us to Business 101 or CIT225. And you'll notice that all that's really different is it'll change that number up there. So course 1, in fact, I can even shortcut this and I can say go to course 2, because that's where it's deciding where it pulls that data from, is just from that URL. But anyways, we would definitely went further than what's required, but I hope you can kind of see, I thought this might be kind of fun just to kind of give you a template. If you ever wanted to try to start, because we're at that point of the semester, which, congratulations to all you for making it, but we're at that point in the semester where hopefully, not only do you know how, but you kind of have a desire, because really you're not going to, and I've always kind of been this way, if you're not practicing something, you're not going to remember it. And so if you have an idea, we all have projects in the future in our courses. Maybe you just want to build your own, recipe book online. That would be I think that would be a great project. You can go ahead and do that and have all the skills to know how, which is pretty cool because you can go from nothing to this very, very quickly. So yeah, I hope that if anything, it just helped you kind of see maybe what's a little possible, what's possible.
What do you want us to turn in?
Just a screenshot. So like if it were me, I would just take a screenshot of this right here. I would just like that, and then it'll be good. Just something to show that you did it. Because really, for me, all that matters is that I hope you had fun with it and that you did it. So, if you didn't make it all the way, just let me know where you got to and send a screenshot of what you do have. And, so like if you didn't make it all the way, maybe just show your file permissions. Maybe take, if there's something wrong, take a picture of the error and hopefully we get it all fixed. But, we can definitely work around stuff. So, all right. But does anyone have any questions?
I asked a question on the teams, the final, and about Lab 12.
Oh, right. Lab 12, I can't remember the question about lab. What was your question again?
It's okay. So are we able to, if we finish the final, I heard it's pretty hard. If we don't do well and we want to get some extra credit points, are we able to turn in Lab 12 after we take the final?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And yes, let's actually, since we have a little bit more time, I'll actually just talk a little bit about the finals. So the finals, they are a little difficult, but the way the class is weighted, I think really compensates for that. Most of your grade comes from your labs. But the finals, and it's kind of hard to say because every term I say they're hard, and but many students do extremely well. The one thing I will say about them is that they try to get a little tricky because they can just be a little tricky at times. So you're going to want to read. And next Tuesday, we will spend the whole meeting going over the study guide. And if you haven't seen the study guide, it should be on Canvas. But the study guide will go over all that pretty extensively. But there's two finals. One is a fill in the blank vocabulary exam, and it'll ask questions like, what's a good example? What function would you use to, or what clause would you use if you had an aggregate function to, I'm trying to think of a way to get it. Here's a good one. What type of join would you use to query only results that have matches, and then the answer might be the inner, you'll type an inner. And it is kind of tricky on the spelling because, you have to actually type it in. It's not multiple choice. But they are open book, open notes. So, you can use those. But that, there's that one. And the biggest thing on that one, I think, and like I said, we'll talk a lot about it, that the study guide will really prepare you for that one. And I think a lot of students really do good on the vocabulary exam. The other final is the query. It's the statement exam, query statement exam. I can't remember what it's called. But it actually has SQL statements. And and it'll ask you a question, and it's on the study guide. There's a nice little example of either question. But inside that, it'll be multiple choice, but there might be two questions. And one will ask, does it work or not? The other one will ask, let's see, final study guide. Let's just take a look at it. So here's a good example. So what subquery is known as an expression that returns only one column and one row? And then you'll have to type it in. And this right now you're probably like, oh, I don't even know that. And that's fine. Because we're going to go over all those. And basically you're just kind of going to, I guess, cram for the final, I guess, a little bit. But because we really don't do too much of the reading anymore. There's not much pushing the reading. But the nice thing is whether you recognize this or not, you've used it before. And that's kind of what I like about it, is because as soon as you go and look it up, you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. And you'll be able to go. But this is the one that is kind of tricky. So it'll have something like this where, and in fact, let's play with this one. So it true or false, does the statement run successfully? And the other question will ask, what will the result be, or why doesn't it execute? So let's take a look at this one. We have select c.firstname, pipe, a raw space, pipe, c.lastname from contact. So real quick, just in chat, does it work or not? So on this first little drop down, you would select either one or two. Does it work? Yes or no? What would you guys put? One or yes or no?
I have one little question about that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't say contact C. So is that a typo?
So yep, good eye. So a lot of people have already said no. That is so this is where I kind of say I actually picked this question on purpose because this one is a tricky one. And I kind of wanted to show how it's going to trick you, because the best thing you can do on this exam is take your time and read everything twice. Because in this example, it is not going to run. A lot of people, I'm actually surprised, most people actually say, oh, it returns, because immediately we think, oh, what's it going to return? First name space last name. Okay, it'll return your first and last name. But it actually fails, and that is because we are using C dot first name, but we never defined that alias. So it's actually going to fail because it fails to resolve the column.
Like which one would you do for the second box? Because there's no reason why it fails. It just fails to resolve first name column. If that's quite the reason.
Yeah, so and this kind of comes off of those Oracle errors. So what it actually would fail to resolve this column. So it would say, oh, C dot first name. It would say, oh, I don't know what C dot first name is. So it would fail to resolve the first name column. So you would say 2 no and 5 for the second. And you can kind of use reduction because like in this case, most of the time, because, it's not going to get that nitpicky. Like in this case, you spotted that right off the bat. Well, it's not failing because of the piped concatenation. It's failing because of something else. So that only leaves one option. And most should be like that. So, and just, you know, this is kind of the way that I did my study guide. And apologies if this isn't like what works best for you, but the way I like to study is I like to have a list, and then I like to go through. And so what I would do is, like, if it were me, and I can send you the PDF or the doc version of this, but I like to type my own notes here, because for some reason, me writing those notes, and in fact, it's kind of funny, for my master's degree, I found that even typing them didn't commit them to memory as well as handwriting them. So I actually use my iPad and my pencil to handwrite my notes in Evernote. But so that's kind of the way I set this up, is how I would like my study guide to be. And so basically, you know, I have all these terms, and so for the study guide, and we'll do this a lot tomorrow. And in fact, I have another video that goes through this study guide. But I like to go through all these, and if it were me, I would write down, oh, like DDL, what does that mean? Data definition language. And then I would write in my own words, what does that mean? You know, and kind of go through it. And then, you know, I kind of have, you know, the select statement, the from clause, the where clause, the order by, you know, and I kind of have a little hints in here because maybe there's specific questions like, what's the default order by? If you don't include ascending or descending, what's the default? What's the group by clause, the having clause, and then know the order that the select statements execute. The update statements, the insert statements, delete, truncate, create, drop, alter, and kind of all that stuff. So, you know, that's kind of what I would do, is I would go through that, because the one thing that's kind of nice, obviously, like you guys just saw, because you guys, man, that's awesome. You guys picked that out so fast. The labs have really prepared you more than, I guess, what you might think. And so, because we've been working with this stuff for so long, you know, this is really just kind of polishing off, like, okay, putting a name to what we've been doing if you haven't been reading. And it's fine if you haven't been reading, because, you know, it's fine. Because we're going to do the shorthand version with the study guide. So that's what I would do, is I would just go find the definition, put it in your own words, do whatever it takes for it, so you to remember and understand. Like, for example, DDL, what I would do is I would say data definition language, and then, you know, maybe put my own notes. It defines things. You know, something like that, whatever it takes to remember, because that's actually how I remember. You know, the data definition language defines structures. It defines, like, the table. You know, we define what a table is. And then the data manipulate language.
I have a quick question on this.
Yep.
So can we expect that the exam, the answer would be one of these terms? Because oftentimes I've had fill-in-the-blank exams before, and it's looking for a specific word, and it may not be one of these words. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. For the most part, it will be, you know, because I haven't gone through the final and make sure I have every word on there, but I went through it one time, and actually I think I got pretty close. But they might have changed it from semester to semester. I did double check it, and I think it's the same. Sometimes they add a question or two or take away a question. But for the most part, it probably will be one of these. So, for example, if we go back to the sample question up at the top for our vocabulary exam, what subquery is known to return only one column and one row? And that actually is right. It's one of these. So for the most part, yes, it should be one of these. I'm not going to say that it couldn't be something else, because I haven't actually gone through every question because there's like a whole bank. But odds are it's going to be this. And the nice thing is it's open book, open notes. So if it's something else, you always can look it up. But this should cover, I would probably say I would almost guarantee it covers a large portion of the terms.
So that's another question. Is our study guide considered notes?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Yep. So
Yay.
you can put whatever you want on there. You can use the book. I don't have the ebook downloaded, but I have the book sitting over here on my shelf. The ebook has actually a pretty good glossary in the back. There are the book, the ebook, and what's really nice is the ebook's free. So I would have the ebook readily available because then you can Control F and search it. So if you don't have the ebook downloaded, I would definitely recommend that because then you can Control F and search and find all the occurrences of these terms. And also, because the website is technically part of the book, you are free to use Michael McLaughlin's website. So I always find it just by typing McLaughlin DB1. So all this is openly available as well. Because technically this is the book for the class. And actually most of these, everything is kind of taken off from here. So for example, one thing you might want to study is the select statement. And, here's all these terms. And in that video that I've done in the past and what we'll talk about next week, I'll actually point you to these. So we'll actually go through it all and I'll show you like some really good resources to keep on handy. The other thing that I would recommend that I'm completely fine with you having is this little thing right here. This little image is a must-have, I think. So even when I went and took my certification exams, the first thing I did when the test started, because they give you a whiteboard and a marker, the first thing I did was I just wrote all these real quick from memory. And technically I was to the point where I knew, but I did it just because, whenever I'm going through these in my head, just to verify, because those certification exams, they try to trick you. And so what I do is I just go and I'd actually draw out the circles. So that way, if I was, because they actually had very similar questions, like what's the result of this query? And so then I would actually draw this because almost everything in SQL is centered around joins. So I'd actually draw these. So you are free to use this image as well. I would highly encourage it. But, and he's got this nice little search function here too. So if I was searching for like DML, you can find all the occurrences of DML on his website here. And it's kind of weird. The search isn't exactly right because, it pulls every instance of DML. But for the most part, a lot of those terms will actually be right here on the side. It's kind of nice. So you can actually see the DDL commands right here. Data definition language, DDL commands. So if we go back to our stuff here, so maybe under DDL, and like I said, whatever works for you, that's what I would do. Because like for me, data definition language, I don't have to necessarily write down all the terms for DDL because I try to generalize it. So like for DDL, it defines things. So does an update statement define things, or does it create the structures? No, it manipulates the data inside of those structures. Okay, so that's update is DML. Inserts data into the structures, so it's manipulation language. Deletes rows from the table, so it's a manipulation language. Truncate, same thing. Create statement, it defines the table, so it's definition language. It defines the data. That's kind of what for DDL, DML, that's what it always comes back to. Does this define the data or does it manipulate the data? Drop, does drop, technically drop deletes the data too, but it's a DDL statement because it drops the definition itself. Alter is the DL version of update because it alters the definition, not the data. Update changes the data, alter changes the definition. So I would just, whatever notes you need to do, that's kind of what I would do. and I kind of get a little, like tables. Do you really need to put what a column is? Maybe not. Maybe you do. Whatever works. But anyways, and the other thing is that there are a lot of practices. You can take the practices over and over and over. So you do that, and you actually get a lot of really good sights into some of what the questions are like, and you'll get a good feel. That's a great way to study.
Is the exam timed?
It does have a time. Well, that changed. Let's just go look real quick.
420 minutes.
Yeah.
That's like 6 hours.
Yeah. It's I knew it had a time limit, but it's very large. So that's what I tell people is make sure you have the time, especially for, even for both of them, but especially this query exam. The biggest thing. Yeah. But make sure you have enough, just take your time on this query exam because, don't just glance it and choose, because most of the time there's a little gotcha in there somewhere. And maybe it's just a missing semicolon, something like that. But anyways, good questions. And we'll go over all this a lot next week as well.
I do have one more question.
Yep.
It's open book, open notes. Is it open SQL?
Yes.
So we can have our SQL open and type in code to see if it works.
Yes. Yep. I will let you do that. A lot of them, because like this one comes from our database. There are some that don't have our tables. So unless you're actually going to go and like try to create the tables, which would not be very time productive, they're not going to work. So just know that going ahead. But yes.
Where was the study guide on the website?
The other place, it's in Teams. I'll shoot it out again. It was attached to an announcement. I don't think I attached it to the latest announcement, but it is for sure in Teams, and I will put it with the link to the video on the announcement today.
I also found some really good flashcards on Quizlets that someone had created.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot. I know that there's quite a bit of those.
And I'll put those on Teams as well.
Yeah, and feel free to, anything that helps you study, go feel free and do it. So feel free. All right. Well, if there's no more questions,
I have one really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
For past assignments we've turned in late, are you going to be grading those soon? Just curiosity.
Yep. So my goal this week is to go through all of everything and get everything, all the late work up to date. That is the only downside of, late work is that it never stops. So, but yeah, this week you should see all of your grades up to date.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
That includes the quizzes, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I did still need help getting my IP address.
Yeah, let's get that. So, does anyone else have any general questions before I end the recording?
Just for Lab 12, I know it's extra credit, but do you know offhand any websites I could go to get more information on how to? I've worked on that all week long and couldn't get it working.
Do you know what's? Let's take a look here.
I tried to use the metadata hint that they gave us.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So you're on that step where you have to create the step 3.
Transaction reversal table and then import.
Oh, I'm on the wrong one here. Let's try again. Week 12. Instructions. There we go. All right. And basically all that's saying is that you're going to use a very similar structure as to what you used for the transaction upload table. So what it's saying is you can run this to kind of get it, but really where you already have the data, you can actually go and just copy what you did for the transaction upload table. Let me actually see if I have a quick, let me see if I have a quick version of it here that I could show you. Because really all that's saying is you know, because you've created an external table before in lab, whatever, that you can take that to look at it essentially.
Yeah, and that's what I did, but it's having a problem with the transaction ID. So it imports the transaction IDs and then gives me an error for, and on the instructions it says that you have to ignore the transaction ID and use a transaction reversal S1 next val. And when I try to change my syntax, then it has errors, it has issues. Tried multiple different ways of getting around it.
Let's see. Oh, okay. So the first CSV, the one reverses the number of rentals and it adds new ones down this file if you're not using course blah blah blah. A merge is not necessary. You may accomplish the addition by using an insert statement. You need to ignore the transaction ID value and use a transaction reversal S1.next val value to populate the column. So basically what it's saying is when you actually, so when we, let's see, create the transaction reversal table that imports a transaction upload to.csv file. So let's actually just let me hurry and run it. Because basically what I think it wants you to do is when we run this file, I believe that it should see, what am I missing here? There we go. Let's just turn this off here real quick. Let's just check it out here real quick. Because I think when you run it, it should just kind of skip that row. And then we should be able to handle it all from there.
I was hoping it was. So my understanding was, so in Lab 9, we created a transaction table.
Mm-hmm.
Then we did a transaction upload external table.
Yep.
And loaded all of the information into that one. Then we took the information from that one and inserted it into the transaction table, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So on this one, we are creating a transaction reversal table. And is that basically the same as the transaction upload table?
It's going to be, yeah, pretty much. It's going to be really similar. The only difference is kind of going to be pulling from a different table,
right.
Or a different CSV file.
Yeah.
And basically what we're going to use this reversal table for is to, I think it just like does like, you know, because our normal one will like do all like the, basically like as if we were running to our store. And I believe this one is basically going to like debit some stuff essentially.
It deletes the credit.
Yes.
Item. Inserts a whole bunch of credit items. Mine keeps saying it's deleting 0 credit items when it's supposed to delete something, I guess. And then it keeps giving me an error with the primary key, so the transaction ID.
Yeah, let's take a look. I'm just gonna run this real quick. All right, let's take a look and make sure we got everything we needed here. All right. So you're to this point, right? You can query transaction reversal and get the correct number of rows.
Yes.
Okay. And then you're just to where you need to merge, we're not actually going to run a merge command, but you just need to insert those records into transaction, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically what we're going to do is we're just going to write, and I think it's a typo on his website, because he says to use the transaction.
Reversal S1. But we
Yeah.
never created a transaction.
Yeah, and
reference.
technically we don't want to, because basically the transaction reversal is kind of like this holding pen for our data, and we're just going to put that into transaction. So what we're actually going to use, we're going to use the transaction S1.next val.
That's what I thought, and that's what I tried today.
Yeah,
Still have issues.
so you should just
Okay.
be able to, and that's kind of what he means, is you're going to ignore this, because basically we're selecting everything from transaction reversal. So you're going to put all the columns in order. The only one that's going to be different is, instead of saying transaction reversal ID, you're just going to put transaction S1.next val in its place.
Okay, so the only thing I did wrong is I put that before the select word instead of after. So that's all I have to change. Great, thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right, any other questions?
I do have a question about lab 14 with the Python.
Okay.
I am trying to do the sudo Apache 2 restart, and I keep getting a 500 internal server error. And I've gone through the last two nanos to try and figure out what it could be. And then I saw the message that you said to someone where you do the tail bar log Apache 2 error.log.
Uh-huh.
And I got a couple of fatal failing things. So I'm not entirely sure what I could have done wrong with that.
What do they,
So it says fatal password authentication failed for user, my name, and then it happens a couple more times. And it also says whiskey error.
okay, that's probably the one. So what's the WSGI?
Would that be the thing that comes right after it?
Yeah. What is it?
Oh. It says WSGI colon error, and then in new brackets it goes PID 3546, another colon, TID, and then a bunch of numbers.
Does it have like any code in there? Or any words like description somewhere in that?
Sorry, I'm just looking at it right now. It says operational error on the line before that. Would it help if I pasted what I got into Teams?
Yeah. Go ahead and do that. And we will take a look.
All right, it is posted.
All right, let me get logged in here real quick. I have to do that. two-factor authentication thing. All right, let's take a look. Okay.
And I noticed something that might have been a typo, but I'm not entirely sure because it has us go from app back to app, and then it has us go back to app. So I'm just wondering, do we need to stay in app/app, or do we need to just stay in var ww app? Because I'm wondering if that's what caused me to goof on this.
It just depends on what you're doing. Most of the time, you're going to want to be an app.
Okay.
The only thing that should be different is the WSGI file should be in just plain app. Let's see. WSGI. Okay, and real quick, what I'm going to have you do is restart your server. Restart the server and then refresh your page and then immediately run that tail var log apache error.log, and then that way we should have the latest record right at the end.
So restart it. Let's see.
Oh, and actually it looks like what's going on is it looks like it's actually failing on the password for your database.
Weird, because when I logged into FileZilla, it logged in no issues.
Oh, this is your database for Postgres.
Yeah.
So this, because are you past the point where you just say hello world? Are you trying to add like the SQL Alchemy stuff?
I'm in the SQL Alchemy stuff.
Yeah, so on that line, so it would be, let me see if I still have it open by chance. I don't. So it would be in your app.py and your connections.py. That's actually where it looks like it's complaining. It's actually complaining. So right here where it says psycho pg2, that's actually your Postgres, and it says password authentication failed for your database user. So this is actually the string inside your database file, inside your Flask file. So let me see if I can, let's start this guy up again. Let's pause you.
So are you saying the lines where we had to change the password?
Yep. Where you had to change your, if you're using School Rocks as your password, that's where the issue is, somewhere in there.
And we changed that 2 times, right? In 2 different files?
Yep. And I don't know what you're using, because by default, like if you followed the instructions, the user of your database isn't your name. It would be
Log app or
Yep, it would be catalog app. Yep. So that might be the issue right there. So if you used all the same values as me when you created your database user, you would go to var www app, and then you would go into your models folder and edit models.py, and then you would want, oh, sorry, not that. You would edit connection.py, and right here, so what I'm guessing is somewhere either in this file or in the next one we check, it has your username here. Maybe you're using like your login credentials for Linux. And if you use the same stuff for me when you created the database user, then you'll actually use exactly what's right here. So you'll use catalog_app School Rocks.
Oh, okay. I'll give that a try.
And you'll have to change it in connection.py and then in your app.py.
Right. Okay, yeah, I will give that a try and see if that works.
All right,
Thank you so much.
Yep. And if it doesn't, just shoot me a message on Teams and we can get it figured out.
Great, will do. Thank you.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, if no one else has any other questions, I will stick around for a bit to fix any weird issues that we might be having. Hopefully try to. That's what's really kind of hard is this. Some of those stuff are weird. But we will, we can do it. So if there's no other questions, thanks for being here. Thanks for the class. Because we're actually getting really close to the end, which is it's always kind of depressing for me, but for you guys, it's probably like, oh, I cannot wait. but anyways, have a good one, and shoot me a message on Teams if you come across any issues.
Thank you so much, Brother Crook.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.